An albino puppy was rejected by his own mother. But what the puppy did next shocked the vet. At first it looked like just another heartbreaking case, a fragile little life left behind. But the moment this tiny pup opened his eyes, everything changed. Because behind that rejection was something darker, something no one expected. And as the truth began to surface, danger closed in, not just for the puppy, but for the person who refused to let him go. What secret was powerful enough to risk everything for? And how far would someone go to silence the one puppy that refused to give up? I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The faint glow of dawn was just beginning to touch the horizon when Rook Delaney pulled into the veterinary clinic's parking lot. His old pickup truck's headlights swept across the building's weathered facade, catching something unusual on the front steps. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a discarded box, but something about it made him pause as he gathered his things for his early morning shift. The late March air bit through his thin jacket as he approached the clinic entrance. There, sitting precisely in the center of the concrete steps, was a shoebox sealed with strips of packing tape. Rook's heart sank. He'd worked at the clinic long enough to know what abandoned boxes usually meant. "Please don't be what I think you are," he muttered, crouching down beside it. The box shifted slightly, and a tiny whimper confirmed his fears. With careful fingers, he peeled back the tape, his hands trembling partly from the cold and partly from anger at whoever had left an animal like this. Inside, curled into a tight ball, was a small puppy, startlingly white, with pink eyes that blinked up at him in the dim light. An albino. Around its neck was a crude paper tag marked simply Y4. The pup was trembling, its breath coming in shallow pants. "Hey there, little one," Rook said softly, his heart breaking at the sight. He gently lifted the puppy from the box, cradling it against his chest. The fur felt wrong under his fingers. Not just dirty, but carrying a sharp chemical smell that made his nose wrinkle. "Let's get you inside and warmed up." Using his key card, Rook quickly entered the clinic, heading straight for the examination room. He grabbed a warming blanket from the supply cabinet, wrapping the puppy carefully while keeping up a steady stream of gentle reassurance. "You're safe now. We're going to figure this out together." Under the bright examination lights, he could see just how fragile the pup really was. Its gums were pale, definitely anemic, and that chemical smell seemed to permeate its coat. Something about this wasn't right. This wasn't just a case of someone abandoning an unwanted pet. There was more to the story. As he worked to stabilize the puppy, checking its vitals and starting a chart, Rook found himself already feeling protective of the little creature. "You need a proper name," he said, scratching gently behind one pink ear. "My 4 isn't going to cut it." The pup leaned into his touch, and despite its weakness, tried to lick his hand. "How about Yarrow? It's white and healing, just like you're going to be." The clinic's front door chimed, and Rook heard Dr. Merritt Joyner's familiar footsteps in the hallway. The veterinarian appeared in the doorway, his wire-rimmed glasses slightly fogged from the temperature change. "Rook, you're here early. What's going on?" "Found this little one abandoned on the front steps," Rook explained, stepping aside so Dr. Joyner could examine the puppy. "Box was taped shut, just labeled Y4. He's albino, anemic, and there's some kind of chemical smell on his fur I can't place." Dr. Joyner frowned, adjusting his glasses as he leaned in to examine Yarrow. "Temperature's low but not critical. Good catch getting him warmed up quickly." He paused, his expression growing more serious. "You know the protocol for abandoned animals, Rook. We have to report it, and if someone claims ownership—" "I know," Rook interrupted, perhaps too quickly. "But something's not right here, Dr. Joyner. This wasn't just someone dumping an unwanted pet. The chemical smell, the numbering system. It feels organized, calculated." The veterinarian's face softened slightly. "I understand your concern, but we have to follow proper procedures. Document everything carefully. Photos, initial exam results, the condition of the box. We'll file the report and put a temporary hold for medical care." Rook nodded, but his jaw was set in determination. "I'm going to call Nellie. She's handled cases like this before, and we could use her experience with the documentation." Dr. Joyner sighed, but there was a hint of approval in his eyes. "All right. But remember, if someone comes forward with proof of ownership, our hands are tied legally." As the veterinarian left to prepare for the day's appointments, Rook pulled out his phone and dialed Nellie Voss's number. The senior technician answered on the third ring, her voice alert despite the early hour. "Rook? What's wrong?" "Nellie, I need your help. Found an abandoned puppy this morning. Albino, numbered tag, chemical smell. Something's off about the whole situation." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Another one of your lost causes, huh?" But her tone was warm, understanding. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Start taking photos of everything, and don't throw that box away." True to her word, Nellie arrived shortly after, her practical ponytail swinging as she strode into the exam room. She took one look at Yarrow, and her expression darkened. "Oh, you're right about this one, Rook. This isn't your typical abandonment case." Together, they methodically documented everything: the box, the tape, the tag, the puppy's condition. Nellie's steady hands captured detailed photographs while Rook wrote up his findings. They had just finished when Tracy, the receptionist, appeared in the doorway, her face tight with concern. "Rook, there's a call for Dr. Joyner. Someone named Harlan Pike says he's a registered breeder and he's looking for a puppy that went missing from his facility. Says it was rejected by its dam and he's been searching for it. He's describing an albino pup." Rook's hand instinctively moved to Yarrow, who had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep under the warming blanket. "Pike? The show dog breeder?" Nellie's expression hardened. "I know of him. Has a reputation for perfect bloodlines. Never heard of him having albino pups in his stock, though." "He's on his way here now," Tracy added. "Says he can provide all the registration paperwork." Rook exchanged looks with Nellie. The story didn't add up. A rejected pup wouldn't smell of chemicals, wouldn't be tagged in that clinical way. "We need to move fast," he said quietly. "Something's wrong here, Nellie." "I can feel it." "I believe you," she replied, already pulling up forms on the computer. "Let's get that medical hold in place before he arrives. Document everything about that chemical smell. Take samples if you can. Whatever's going on here, we need evidence." As they worked, Rook could feel the weight of what was coming. He looked down at Yarrow, sleeping peacefully now, trusting and vulnerable. "I'm not letting you go back to whatever situation you came from," he promised softly. "Whatever it takes." The next hour was a blur of activity, collecting samples, filing paperwork, preparing for what they knew would be a confrontation. Dr. Joyner moved between patients and their impromptu investigation, his expression growing more concerned as the evidence mounted. When the clinic's door chimed again, Rook knew without looking that it would be Harlan Pike. He could hear the confident footsteps, the authoritative voice asking for Dr. Joyner. Straightening his shoulders, Rook shared one final look with Nellie, who gave him a subtle nod. "Whatever happens," she murmured, "we're doing this by the book, but we're also doing what's right." Rook took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation to come. In the treatment area, Yarrow stirred in his sleep, letting out a tiny whimper. That sound strengthened Rook's resolve. Sometimes he knew doing what was right meant standing your ground, even when the odds were stacked against you. The front door of the clinic swung open with purpose, and Harlan Pike strode in like he owned the place. His polished leather boots clicked against the linoleum floor, each step radiating authority. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in crisp khakis and a pressed button-down shirt that probably cost more than Rook made in a week. Rook watched from the treatment area doorway as Pike approached the front desk, pulling a leather portfolio from under his arm. The breeder's presence seemed to fill the small waiting room, making even the usual morning chaos of barking dogs and meowing cats feel subdued. "I'm here to see Dr. Joyner," Pike announced, his voice carrying that particular tone of someone used to immediate compliance, "regarding my missing puppy." Tracy, the receptionist, kept her professional smile in place. "Of course, Mr. Pike. He's just finishing up with a patient. Would you mind taking a seat?" Pike's jaw tightened slightly, but he gave a curt nod and settled into one of the waiting room chairs, portfolio balanced on his knee. Rook noticed how the man's fingers drummed impatiently against the leather cover. Dr. Joyner emerged from exam room 1 a few minutes later, ushering out Mrs. Henderson and her elderly poodle. As soon as the door closed behind them, Pike was on his feet. "Dr. Joyner," he said, extending his hand. "Harlan Pike. I believe you have one of my puppies." The veterinarian shook Pike's hand, his expression carefully neutral. "Yes, Mr. Pike. Why don't we step into my office to discuss this?" Rook followed them, exchanging a quick glance with Nellie, who was already documenting everything with her phone's camera. They gathered in Dr. Joyner's small office, Pike taking the visitor's chair while Rook and Nellie stood near the door. Pike opened his portfolio, laying out several official-looking documents on the desk. "As you can see, I have all the necessary paperwork here. Breeding licenses, pedigree certificates, registration documents. The puppy in question is from my latest litter, born to Champion Moonlight's Silver Sonata." Dr. Joyner examined the papers carefully while Pike continued. "Unfortunately, sometimes nature has its way of culling the imperfect. The dam rejected this pup. It happens occasionally with albinos. We've been searching for him since yesterday evening when we discovered him missing." Rook felt his chest tighten. The story sounded rehearsed, too perfect. He pulled out his phone and, while Pike was focused on Dr. Joyner, quietly snapped photos of Yarrow's stained muzzle through the treatment room window. "Mr. Pike," Dr. Joyner said carefully, "while your paperwork appears to be in order, we have certain protocols we must follow when animals are brought to us under suspicious circumstances." Pike's friendly demeanor slipped slightly. "Suspicious?" "Doctor, I assure you there's nothing suspicious about a mother rejecting an imperfect pup. It's unfortunate, but natural. I simply want to retrieve my property and handle this situation appropriately." The way he said property made Rook's skin crawl. He stepped forward slightly. "Dr. Joyner, the puppy had chemical residue on his fur when we found him. And there's an unusual tag dash." "Ah, yes," Pike interrupted smoothly. "We use a mild cleaning solution in our kennels. Top quality stuff. As for the tag, all our puppies are numbered for tracking purposes. Best practices, you understand." Nellie cleared her throat. "The chemical smell is quite strong, Mr. Pike." Almost caustic. "Would you mind telling us exactly what cleaning product you use?" A flash of annoyance crossed Pike's face. "I don't see how that's relevant. I've provided proof of ownership, unless you're suggesting I've done something improper." "Not at all," Dr. Joyner said quickly. "However, we do have to follow certain protocols. Without clear evidence of cruelty, we're obligated to return the puppy, but we need to document everything properly first." Pike's fingers drummed on the arm of his chair. "How long will this documentation take?" While Dr. Joyner explained the process, Rook slipped out to the treatment area. His hands shook slightly as he dialed animal control. After 2 rings, a steady voice answered. "Officer Vale speaking." "Officer Vale, this is Rook Delaney at Riverside Veterinary Clinic. We have a situation I need some clarity on. It's about an abandoned puppy and ownership claims." "Go ahead, Mr. Delaney." Rook quickly outlined the situation, describing the chemical smell, the tag, and Pike's story. As he talked, he noticed something else through the window. Fresh marks on Pike's hands when the breeder gestured, red and angry-looking. Bite marks, inconsistent with his story of a calm, rejecting mother. "Listen," Sutton Vale said after Rook finished. "Without clear evidence of abuse or neglect, the law favors the owner with documentation, but if you have concerns, document everything. Take samples if you can. I'll check our records for any previous complaints about this breeder." "Thanks, Officer Vale." How quickly can you get here? I can be there in 20 minutes. Just keep things calm until then. When Rook returned to the office, Pike was standing, his patience clearly wearing thin. This is ridiculous. I have appointments waiting. I demand you release my property immediately. Dr. Joyner adjusted his glasses. Mr. Pike, we're simply following required procedures. We need to complete our documentation and wait for animal control to verify. Animal control? Pike's voice rose sharply. You called animal control? Based on what? The word of a kennel tech? The dismissive way he said it made Rook's face burn, but Nellie stepped forward before he could respond. Based on evidence we're required to document, Mr. Pike. Would you like to explain these bite marks on your hands? They look fresh. Pike shoved his hands into his pockets. I work with dogs all day. Minor injuries happen. This is nothing but a delay tactic. Dr. Joyner, I must insist. You can insist all you want. Rook said quietly, surprising himself with his steady tone. But we're going to follow procedure. Every single step. The room grew very still. Pike turned slowly to face Rook, his expression hardening into something ugly before he quickly masked it. You're making a mistake, young man. Do you have any idea who I am in the breeding community? One word from me. Would carry less weight than properly filed documentation? Nellie interrupted, her phone camera clicking as she photographed Pike's partially concealed hands. Which is exactly what we're doing. Dr. Joyner cleared his throat. Mr. Pike, I understand your frustration, but my staff is correct. We must follow protocols. You're welcome to wait, or you can return when Officer Vale arrives. Pike's jaw worked for a moment before he gathered his papers with sharp movements. This is unacceptable. I'll be speaking with my lawyer. And Dr. Joyner. He paused at the door. You might want to consider the quality of staff you keep. Some people don't know their place. After he stormed out, the office remained quiet for a long moment. Finally, Dr. Joyner sighed heavily. Rook, Nellie, are you absolutely certain about this? Pike is a powerful man in this community. Rook met his boss's eyes steadily. Something's wrong here, Dr. Joyner. Those bite marks were defensive wounds. The chemical smell isn't from any normal cleaning product. And that story about the mother rejecting him? Why would she suddenly attack Pike if she'd already rejected the pup? He's right, Nellie added. I've documented everything. The marks on the puppy, the chemical residue, Pike's injuries. My gut says there's something much worse happening at that breeding facility. Dr. Joyner removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. All right. But we have to be careful. Without clear evidence of cruelty, the law requires us to return the puppy to its documented owner. That's why Pike brought all that paperwork. He knows his rights. Then we'll find the evidence. Rook said firmly. Officer Vale is on his way. He's checking for previous complaints. In the meantime, we document everything. We follow every procedure perfectly. And we don't let Pike bully us into rushing this. Through the window, they could see Pike in the parking lot, phone pressed to his ear as he gestured angrily. The morning sun caught his polished appearance, but Rook could now see the cracks in that perfect facade, the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept his injured hands close to his body, the barely contained rage in his movements. Whatever's going on, Nellie said quietly. That man is not used to being challenged. We need to be prepared for him to fight back hard. Rook looked toward the treatment area where Yarrow slept peacefully, unaware of the battle brewing around him. The puppy's pale fur still carried that bitter chemical smell, a silent testimony that something was very wrong. Whatever Pike had planned for the little albino pup, Rook was now certain it wasn't simply a case of maternal rejection. Let him fight, Rook said, pulling out his phone to document everything again. We'll do this by the book. But we're not backing down. The lines were drawn now, Pike's power and influence against their determination to uncover the truth. As they waited for Officer Vale to arrive, Rook could feel the weight of institutional limits pressing against his resolve to protect Yarrow. But looking at the sleeping puppy, he knew some fights were worth taking on, no matter the odds. Dr. Joyner began preparing the necessary forms while Nellie continued photographing everything. They could hear Pike's raised voice from the parking lot, making threats into his phone. But Rook stayed focused on his task, carefully swabbing samples of the chemical residue from Yarrow's fur. Whatever came next, they would face it armed with evidence and unwavering determination to do what was right. The morning sun was climbing higher when Officer Sutton Vale's patrol vehicle pulled into the clinic's parking lot. Through the window, Rook watched the officer step out, tall and imposing in his crisp uniform, but with kind eyes that suggested fairness. Those eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of Harlan Pike still pacing near his luxury SUV. Inside the clinic's small conference room, tension crackled as Officer Vale reviewed the documentation spread across the table. Pike had wasted no time presenting his credentials: breeding licenses, show ribbons, and spotless inspection records arranged like playing cards in a winning hand. "As you can see, officer," Pike said smoothly, "my facility maintains the highest standards, 20 years of excellence. The mother's rejection of this defective pup, while unfortunate, is a natural occurrence. I'm simply here to retrieve my property." Rook's hands clenched under the table at the word property. He watched Officer Vale's face carefully as the man studied each document. "Your paperwork appears to be in order, Mr. Pike," Vale acknowledged, his voice measured. "According to statute, without clear evidence of cruelty or neglect, a registered owner has the right to reclaim their animal. That's what I've been trying to explain to these people," Pike said, shooting a pointed look at Rook. "Instead, they've detained my property without cause." Rook leaned forward. "Officer Vale, we have concerns about the puppy's condition. The chemical residue on his fur, the staining around his muzzle. These aren't consistent with simple maternal rejection. We're requesting a brief medical hold too." "To what?" Pike interrupted. "To fabricate evidence? To damage my reputation? I've cooperated fully, provided all necessary documentation. This delay is harassment." Officer Vale held up a hand for silence. "Mr. Delaney, what specific evidence of cruelty can you present?" Nellie spoke up, spreading photographs across the table. "These images show chemical residue of unknown origin. The muzzle staining suggests forced contact, not natural rejection. And Mr. Pike's own injuries," she gestured to his bandaged hands, "indicate aggressive handling, not the behavior of a dam simply avoiding her pup." Vale studied the photos carefully. "These are concerning observations," he said slowly. "But without conclusive proof of wrongdoing, they don't meet the legal threshold for withholding the animal from its registered owner." "Exactly," Pike said, standing. "Now, if we're done here—" "Please sit down, Mr. Pike," Vale said firmly. "Mr. Delaney, you mentioned a medical hold?" Rook nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. Given the puppy's condition, anemia, chemical exposure, possible trauma, we believe a 24-hour observation period is warranted for his safety." Pike's face darkened. "Absolutely not. This is a transparent delay tactic." Officer Vale consulted his phone, scrolling through legal codes. A medical hold requires documented symptoms severe enough to threaten the animal's immediate health. Can you demonstrate that level of medical necessity? Rook's heart sank as he reviewed their documentation. The puppy was stable, if weak. The chemical exposure, while suspicious, hadn't caused visible damage. They had concerns and circumstantial evidence, but nothing that met the strict legal requirements for overriding an owner's rights. "No," he admitted reluctantly. "Not at that threshold." "But Officer Vale, something isn't right here. The marking on the box, Y4, suggests some kind of systematic dash." "Speculation," Pike cut in. "Officer, I've been more than patient. Either enforce the law, or I'll have my attorney do it for you." Vale's expression was sympathetic but firm. "I understand your concerns, Mr. Delaney. But without hard evidence of cruelty, I'm bound by statute. The puppy must be released to Mr. Pike." Rook felt the walls closing in. He looked to Nellie, who was rapidly flipping through their intake photos. Her eyes met his with quiet urgency. "Rook," she said softly, "look at this pattern." He moved to her side, studying the images spread before them. The bitter chemical scent they'd documented, the distinctive muzzle staining, the defensive bites on Pike's hands, all suggesting not rejection, but resistance. A mother fighting contact, a puppy marked with Y4 like a processing code. "Officer Vale," Rook said, his mind racing. "The label on the box? Y4. In your experience, have you seen similar marking systems used in commercial breeding operations?" Vale frowned thoughtfully. "Sometimes. For tracking purposes." "Why?" "Because if this is part of a larger pattern, if there are records of other puppies marked this way—" Rook trailed off meaningfully. Pike's casual demeanor slipped for just a moment. "That's entirely irrelevant. You have no authority to investigate my internal practices." But Vale was already making notes. "Actually, Mr. Pike, if there's documentation of a systematic pattern, that could justify a broader inquiry, but," he added, looking at Rook, "that would require proper channels, warrants, and time we don't currently have." The clock on the wall seemed to tick louder. Pike stood again, this time more forcefully. "Enough. I'm taking my property now, or I'm calling my lawyer." Vale nodded slowly. "By law, yes. You have that right. Mr. Delaney, without immediate evidence of cruelty, I cannot prevent Mr. Pike from reclaiming the puppy." Rook felt sick, but his mind was already moving forward, seeking angles within the rules. The Y4 label was a thread, one that could potentially be pulled to unravel whatever Pike was hiding. But first they had to buy time. "I understand, officer," he said carefully. "We'll process the release paperwork right away. But Mr. Pike, we'll need to document the puppy's condition upon release. Standard liability protection. Photos, samples, measurements, all by the book." Pike's jaw clenched, but he could hardly object to proper documentation without raising more suspicions. "Fine. But make it quick." As Nellie gathered her camera and Rook prepared the release forms, he caught Vale's eye. The officer gave him a slight nod. He'd picked up on what Rook was doing. Every photo, every sample, every measurement would create a paper trail, and that Y4 label might just lead them to whatever Pike was trying to hide. Time was running out for now, but Rook refused to give up. He'd follow procedure perfectly, document everything meticulously, and then trace that label back to its source. Pike might have the law on his side for the moment, but patterns left trails, and Rook was determined to follow this one wherever it led. "Right this way, Mr. Pike," he said, leading them toward the treatment area. "We'll need to start with current weight and measurements." Pike followed, his polished exterior barely containing his impatience. But Rook noticed how the man's injured hands stayed close to his body, how his eyes darted to the clock, how his confidence seemed more brittle with each passing minute. Whatever Pike was hiding, whatever system that Y4 label belonged to, Rook would find it. He had to. Yarrow's life might depend on it. For now, though, he focused on buying precious minutes with every careful measurement and detailed photo, building the foundation for whatever would come next. In the treatment area, Yarrow blinked awake, his pale pink eyes finding Rook's. The puppy's trust made Rook's chest ache, but he forced himself to stay professional. He would find a way to protect this little one, even if he had to do it within the frustrating constraints of the law. Nellie's camera clicked steadily, documenting everything. Officer Vale watched from the doorway, his presence both a reminder of legal limits and a promise of potential help once they found real evidence. And Pike stood stiffly nearby, his injuries and impatience telling a story he didn't realize he was sharing. The clock kept ticking, but Rook's mind was already racing ahead, plotting the investigation to come. Whatever that Y4 meant, wherever it led, he would follow the trail. Sometimes the smallest threads, when pulled carefully, could unravel the biggest secrets. Nellie's fingers flew across her keyboard, her eyes intense as she dug deeper into Pike's breeding records. The afternoon sun slanted through the clinic windows, casting long shadows across her desk. Rook stood behind her, watching the screen as she pulled up file after file from the county's agricultural database. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a spreadsheet. "Every single one of Pike's litter registrations follows the same pattern. Perfect numbers, perfect outcomes. But there's something off about these internal codes." Rook leaned closer, squinting at the screen. "The Y numbers?" "Exactly." Nellie pulled up another document. "See here. Y1 through Y7 in the past year alone. Each one mysteriously disappeared from the records shortly after being logged. And look at the dates. They all vanish within 48 hours of being tagged." A chill ran down Rook's spine. Just like they tried to do with Yarrow. "Y4, Nellie corrected, her voice grim. "That's what was written on the box you found. It's not just a random label. It's part of their system." She pulled up more files, cross-referencing dates and numbers. "Pike's Kennel advertises iron-strong bloodlines. Perfect specimens only. But nature doesn't work that way. Every breeder gets pups that don't meet standard sometimes. Unless they're making sure those pups disappear," Rook said quietly. "Bingo!" Nellie's fingers paused on the keyboard. "It's not just one case of abandonment, it's systematic culling. Anything that doesn't meet their standards, albinos, runts, minor defects, gets tagged with a Y number and—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. Rook's hands clenched into fists as he thought of Yarrow, alone in that box, marked for disposal like he was nothing more than a failed product. "We need to show this to Dr. Joyner," he said, and Officer Vale agreed. Nellie started printing key documents. "But we have to be smart about this. Pike's got friends in high places, and these records alone aren't enough to prove current wrongdoing." They found Dr. Joyner in his office, reviewing patient files. His wire-rimmed glasses reflected the afternoon light as he studied the evidence they laid before him. Officer Vale arrived 20 minutes later, his expression growing more serious with each document he examined. "This pattern is concerning," Vale said, "but Nellie's right. We need current evidence of misconduct to take action. Pike's due to bring in his latest litter for vaccinations next week." Dr. Joyner noted, checking his calendar. "Standard 8-week checkup and shots." Rook's eyes lit up. "That's perfect. We can examine the whole litter, including the dam, right here in the clinic, if there's any sign of mishandling or abuse. We document everything properly and can place an immediate medical hold." Dr. Joyner finished, completely by the book. Vale nodded slowly. "A routine inspection during a scheduled visit. Nothing for Pike to get suspicious about. We'll need to be thorough, though. Photography, detailed medical notes, everything documented to the letter." "What about Yarrow?" Rook asked. "He could be evidence, too." "Let's keep him separated for now," Dr. Joyner advised. "We don't want to tip our hand." As far as Pike knows, this is just a routine vaccination appointment. They spent the next hour planning the details. Nellie would handle photography and documentation. Dr. Joyner would conduct the examinations, paying special attention to any signs of chemical exposure or rough handling. Officer Vale would be present as a routine oversight measure, standard procedure for large-scale breeder visits. "Remember," Vale cautioned, "we need to keep this quiet. If Pike suspects anything, he might not bring the litter in at all." Down the hall, in his temporary kennel, Yarrow was growing stronger by the hour. His pink eyes tracked movement more alertly, and his appetite had improved significantly. But there was something else. Something that made Rook pause whenever he checked on him. Every time Pike's name was mentioned within earshot, Yarrow's ears would prick up, and he'd nose at the kennel door, as if trying to warn them. His whole body would tense, like he was remembering something he wanted desperately to communicate. "You're our key witness, aren't you, boy?" Rook murmured, scratching behind Yarrow's ears. The pup pressed against his hand, those unusual pink eyes seeming to hold secrets they were finally getting close to uncovering. The next few days passed in a carefully maintained routine. The clinic staff treated Pike's upcoming appointment like any other breeder visit. Dr. Joyner called to confirm the time and date, making no mention of their suspicions. Nellie quietly organized her camera equipment and prepared fresh documentation forms. Officer Vale arranged his schedule to be coincidentally present for a routine inspection. Behind the scenes, they refined their plan. Every detail needed to be perfect, their documentation spotless, their approach professional and by the book. They couldn't risk Pike finding any procedural flaw to exploit. "The key is staying calm," Dr. Joyner reminded them during a final planning meeting. "No matter what we find, we handle it according to protocol. We're professionals conducting a standard medical examination, nothing more, nothing less." "And if we find evidence of abuse?" Rook asked. "Then we have proper channels to pursue," Vale assured him. "But we need that evidence first, documented properly and without any possibility of contamination." Nellie finished organizing her equipment. "I'll focus on the dam first," she said. "If they've been forcing her to reject puppies, there might be signs of physical trauma or chemical exposure." The plan was set. Now they just had to wait for Pike to bring in his latest litter, maintaining their routine while preparing for what could be a crucial revelation. The stakes were high, not just for Yarrow, but for every puppy that might have been marked with a Y number and disappeared. In his kennel, Yarrow continued to heal and grow stronger. His coat was beginning to shine, the chemical smell finally fading. But every time Pike's name echoed down the hallway, his reaction was immediate, alert, wary, ready to sound an alarm that might finally be heard. The stage was set for their careful investigation. Everything depended on maintaining their professional facade while gathering the evidence they needed. One misstep could warn Pike and derail their entire plan. But if they succeeded, they might finally expose a system that had been quietly disposing of innocent lives in the name of perfect bloodlines. Dr. Joyner made one final check of their preparation. "Everyone knows their roles?" They nodded, their commitment clear in their eyes. This wasn't just about one puppy anymore. It was about stopping a pattern of cruelty that had gone on far too long. And they would do it properly, legally, and irrefutably. The appointment was scheduled for 9 o'clock the following morning. As darkness fell over the clinic, they went about their normal closing routine, giving no outward sign that anything unusual was brewing. But each of them felt the weight of what was coming, their chance to shine a light on a darkness that had been hidden behind paperwork and procedures for far too long. The morning dawned crisp and clear as Harlan Pike's gleaming white van pulled into the clinic parking lot at precisely 9 o'clock. Through the clinic windows, Rook watched the breeder emerge, immaculately dressed in pressed khakis and a spotless button-down shirt. Pike carried a leather portfolio in one hand and projected his usual air of unshakable authority. Nellie positioned herself at the front desk, her camera discreetly ready beneath the counter. Dr. Joyner stood nearby, reviewing what appeared to be routine paperwork, but was actually their carefully prepared documentation forms. Officer Sutton Vale had arrived 15 minutes earlier and now sat casually in the waiting area, appearing to read a magazine while maintaining a clear view of the entrance. "Good morning," Pike called out as he entered, his voice carrying that practiced warmth that never quite reached his eyes. "Beautiful day for vaccinations, isn't it?" "Indeed it is, Mr. Pike," Dr. Joyner responded professionally. "I see you've brought the dam and her litter." "All present and accounted for," Pike confirmed, setting his portfolio on the counter. "Everything's in perfect order, as always. I've brought their complete health records and lineage documentation." Rook watched as Pike spread out an impressive array of paperwork, vaccination records, breeding certificates, and show ribbons, all meticulously organized. The breeder's confidence was apparent in every gesture as he presented what appeared to be an impeccable paper trail. "Very thorough, as usual," Nellie commented, beginning to input the information into their system. "We'll just need to verify the microchip numbers against our records, if you don't mind." Of course," Pike agreed smoothly. "The transport crates are secured in the van. Everything's labeled and organized. Should make your job nice and easy." "We appreciate that," Dr. Joyner said. "Rook, would you assist Mr. Pike in bringing in the crates? We'll want to check vitals on each animal before proceeding with the vaccinations." Rook nodded, maintaining a neutral expression as he followed Pike out to the van. His heart was pounding, but years of handling difficult situations helped him keep his movements calm and professional. Behind him, he could hear Nellie continuing to engage Pike in conversation about his breeding program, keeping him talking while they proceeded with their planned verification process. The van's interior was spotlessly clean, with several transport crates secured along both sides. Through the wire doors, Rook could see the dam, a beautiful specimen of the breed, and her litter of puppies. All appeared well-groomed and healthy at first glance, but Rook noticed how the mother dog's eyes seemed to track Pike's movements with unusual intensity. They began bringing in the crates one by one, setting them up in the examination room where Dr. Joyner waited. Officer Vale had positioned himself where he could observe, without being obvious, his presence appearing coincidental rather than planned. "Let's start with basic vitals," Dr. Joyner announced, pulling out his stethoscope. "Standard procedure for all vaccinations." Pike nodded, though Rook caught a slight tightening around his eyes. Surely that's not necessary for every animal. Their records show all vitals were checked just last week. "It's clinic policy," Dr. Joyner replied mildly. "We need current readings before administering any vaccines. I'm sure you understand. Liability concerns in today's world." While they talked, Rook was handling routine kennel duties, including checking on Yarrow in his temporary housing. The small albino pup had been unusually restless all morning, pacing his enclosure. As Rook approached to check his water, something unprecedented happened. In a flash of white fur, Yarrow somehow slipped his soft recovery collar and darted past Rook's legs. Before anyone could react, the pup was racing down the corridor toward the clinic's front entrance, moving with surprising speed for his size. "Yarrow!" Rook called out, immediately giving chase. The pup was already pushing through the door into the parking lot, forcing Rook to sprint after him. A large SUV was backing out of a space, and Rook's heart nearly stopped as Yarrow darted behind it. He lunged forward, managing to wave frantically at the driver, who slammed on their brakes just in time. But Yarrow wasn't finished. Instead of running away or hiding under a vehicle as most escaped animals might, he made a deliberate beeline straight for Pike's van. The pup began scratching frantically at the closed rear doors, whining with an urgency that couldn't be ignored. By now, everyone had followed the commotion outside. Pike's face had lost some of its usual polish as he watched Yarrow's determined assault on his van's doors. The pup's behavior was too specific, too pointed to be random. "Mr. Pike," Dr. Joyner said firmly, all pretense of routine procedure dropped. "I'm going to need you to open that van for inspection." "This is ridiculous," Pike protested, though his voice had lost some of its usual authority. "That pup is clearly disturbed, probably why its mother rejected it in the first place. You have no right." "Actually, I do," Dr. Joyner interrupted. "As a licensed veterinarian, I have a duty of care to investigate any sign of animal distress. That pup's behavior clearly indicates something in your van is causing significant anxiety. Officer Vale can confirm this is well within my authority." Sutton stepped forward, his presence now obviously professional rather than casual. "He's correct, Mr. Pike. You can either open the van voluntarily or we can get a warrant. Your choice, but one way or another, we're going to need to check what's causing this reaction." Pike's careful facade was cracking. He looked from face to face, finding no allies among the clinic staff. Yarrow continued scratching at the van's doors, his determination unwavering. "This is harassment." Pike tried again, but his voice held more desperation than conviction now. "I have rights." "So do these animals." Nellie spoke up, her camera now openly in her hands, documenting everything. "And right now, we have clear evidence of an animal in distress responding to something in your vehicle. The law is very clear about this." Rook had managed to scoop up Yarrow, but the pup continued struggling, trying to get back to the van doors. His behavior was too specific, too insistent to be dismissed. Whatever was in that van, Yarrow knew about it, and he was determined to expose it. "Last chance to open it voluntarily, Mr. Pike," Officer Vale said quietly. "Otherwise, I'll call for backup and a warrant right now." Your choice, but this inspection is happening either way. The morning sun beat down on the parking lot as they waited for Pike's decision. The carefully maintained facade of routine vaccines and paperwork had been shattered by one small pup's desperate act. Whatever secrets Pike had been hiding behind his polished exterior and meticulous documents, Yarrow's instincts had brought them to this moment of truth. Pike's hands shook slightly as he reached for his keys, his carefully constructed world of control beginning to crumble around him. The sound of the van's locks disengaging seemed to echo across the parking lot, marking the moment when all his careful planning began to unravel. Every person present knew that opening those doors would change everything. Yarrow had forced their hand, bringing them face to face with whatever dark truth Pike had been hiding behind his pristine paperwork and professional demeanor. There would be no going back from what they were about to discover. The van door swung open with a metallic creak that seemed to echo through the parking lot. What they found inside made everyone's heart stop for a moment. There, on a thin blanket, lay Yarrow's mother, her body racked with violent tremors, her breathing coming in desperate pants. Beside her, two tiny puppies lay frighteningly still, their small bodies barely moving. "Oh, God!" Rook breathed, his chest tight with horror. He recognized the signs immediately, the twitching, the labored breathing. The mother dog was in the grips of eclampsia, a dangerous condition that could kill her and her puppies if not treated right away. Dr. Joyner sprang into action, his usual cautious demeanor replaced by urgent purpose. "Rook, get my emergency kit from the clinic. Nellie, prepare the treatment room, now!" Rook ran faster than he'd ever moved before, his boots pounding against the pavement. Behind him, he could hear Harlan Pike's protests growing louder, more desperate. "This is ridiculous! You have no right to!" "Sir," Officer Sutton's steady voice cut through, "step back and let the medical team work." When Rook returned with the kit, Dr. Joyner was already examining the mother dog, his experienced hands gentle but quick. "She's in active eclampsia. We need to start treatment immediately." He pulled out a calcium solution and began preparing an injection. "Rook, help me stabilize her head. Nellie, get those cooling packs on her." They worked as a team, moving with practiced efficiency. Dr. Joyner administered the calcium, while Nellie applied cooling measures to bring down the dog's dangerous fever. Rook held the mother steady, whispering soft words of comfort as she trembled under his hands. Officer Sutton stood nearby, his notebook out, recording everything with methodical precision. "Time is 11:47 a.m., he muttered as he wrote. "Subject dog displaying severe tremors, elevated temperature." He documented each symptom, each treatment, creating a detailed record that would later become crucial evidence. The minutes ticked by like hours. Slowly, painfully slowly, the mother dog's tremors began to ease. Her breathing became less labored, more regular. Dr. Joyner checked her temperature again, nodding with cautious relief. "The calcium's helping," he announced. "Rook, let's check those puppies." The two weakened littermates responded to the emergency care, their tiny bodies fighting back from the brink. Rook felt tears prick his eyes as one of them lifted its head slightly, letting out a weak but determined squeak. Through it all, Yarrow hadn't left the van's open door, his pink eyes fixed on his family. His unusual behavior, the desperate dash to the van, the frantic scratching, now made perfect sense. He'd somehow known his mother and siblings were in trouble. "Document his alerting behavior," Dr. Joyner instructed Sutton. "That's significant." Later, once the immediate crisis had passed and the animals were stabilized in the clinic's treatment room, Nellie made another discovery. She was carefully washing Yarrow, preparing him for a more thorough examination, when she noticed something around his muzzle. "Dr. Joyner!" she called out, her voice tight with controlled anger. "You need to see this." Under the bright examination lights, they could all see it, a residue around Yarrow's mouth, a substance that explained the bitter smell they'd noticed earlier. Dr. Joyner took samples carefully, his expression grim. "This appears to be a bitterant," he explained, looking directly at Harlan Pike. "The kind commonly used to prevent nursing." not something that would be present if a mother naturally rejected her pup. Pike's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. The polished, confident breeder who'd walked in earlier was gone, replaced by a man whose carefully constructed lies were unraveling thread by thread. "You don't understand," he started, his voice rising. "The bloodline dash." "Save it for the judge," Sutton interrupted, pulling out more forms. "Dr. Joyner, I assume you're placing these animals on medical hold?" "Absolutely." Dr. Joyner's voice was firm, brooking no argument. "Based on the mother's condition and the evidence of intentional interference with nursing, I'm ordering an immediate medical hold on all these animals." Rook watched as Sutton began filling out paperwork for an emergency warrant. The officer's pen moved steadily across the page, noting down every damning detail. The eclampsia that had been left untreated, the bitterant used to prevent nursing, the false claims of maternal rejection. Each fact was another nail in the coffin of Pike's deception. The clinic's careful documentation, the intake photos, the medical logs, the samples they'd collected, and most crucially, their intervention with the sick mother, had created an unshakable chain of evidence. What Pike had tried to pass off as a simple case of maternal rejection had been exposed as something far more sinister. Nellie had been taking photographs throughout the entire incident, her camera capturing every crucial detail. The mother's condition, the weak puppies, the residue around Yarrow's muzzle, everything was preserved, documented, undeniable. "You'll be receiving a formal notice," Sutton informed Pike, who stood silent now. His earlier protests died on his lips. "These animals remain in the custody of the clinic pending investigation. I strongly suggest you contact your lawyer." The truth they'd suspected all along had finally burst into the open, impossible to ignore or explain away. Pike's careful staging, his attempt to justify culling Yarrow and potentially his siblings, had collapsed under the weight of medical evidence and the dedicated observation of people who refused to look the other way. Dr. Joyner began writing up his official findings, his usually neat handwriting slightly rushed, but still legible. "Nellie, please start a fresh chart for the mother and both littermates. We'll need to monitor them closely for the next 24 hours at least." Rook remained with the puppies, his heart still racing from the events of the morning. He watched as Yarrow nestled close to his mother, who was now resting more comfortably on clean blankets in the treatment room. The little albino pup, who had started all this with his mysterious arrival in a shoebox, had led them straight to the truth. "Good boy, Yarrow," he whispered, gently stroking the pup's pale fur. "You saved them. You saved them all." The morning's controlled routine had exploded into urgent action, but the result was clear. The truth could no longer be hidden. What Pike had tried to dismiss as nature's way had been exposed as calculated cruelty, and now there would be consequences. The evidence was too clear, too well documented, too impossible to deny. Pike stood by the clinic's front desk, his polished boots no longer seeming quite so authoritative, his pressed shirt slightly rumpled from the morning's events. The man who had walked in expecting to maintain control now looked lost, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. Sutton continued his methodical documentation, building a case that would be impossible to ignore. Each detail was noted: the timing of their discovery, the mother's medical condition, the presence of the bitterant, Yarrow's alerting behavior that had led them to the truth. Nothing was left to chance or memory. In the treatment room, Dr. Joyner worked with focused precision, ensuring the mother and all her puppies were stable and comfortable. The immediate crisis had passed, but he knew the next 24 hours would be crucial. He'd already called in extra staff to ensure round-the-clock monitoring. The truth had finally broken free, like sunshine after a storm. The staged rejection that Pike had tried to use to justify his actions had unraveled completely, exposed by the very animals he had tried to discard. Now, in the bright light of day, there would be no more shadows to hide in, no more excuses to make. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the clinic parking lot as Officer Sutton Vale stepped away from the group, her radio crackling to life. Her steady voice carried clearly as she coordinated with dispatch, methodically laying out the situation they'd uncovered. "Dispatch, this is Officer Vale, requesting immediate processing of emergency warrant for Pike Kennels. We have documented evidence of animal cruelty and medical neglect. Multiple affected animals now in veterinary custody." Inside the clinic, Dr. Merritt Joyner moved with purpose, his wire-rimmed glasses reflecting the fluorescent lights as he directed his team. "Get the dam and pups into Isolation Ward 3. He instructed, his usually cautious demeanor replaced by firm authority. "I want continuous monitoring and detailed charts for all of them." Rook Delaney watched from near the treatment area, his shoulders finally dropping from their tense position. For the first time since finding Yarrow that morning, he felt like he could actually breathe. The little albino pup sat quietly at his feet, pink eyes alert but calmer now that his mother and siblings were receiving care. "We did it, buddy," Rook murmured, crouching down to scratch behind Yarrow's ears. "We really did it." Across the room, Nellie Voss was a whirlwind of focused energy. Her phone clicked rapidly as she photographed every detail: the mother dog's condition, the pup's vital sign charts, the residue of chemicals still visible on their fur. Her practical ponytail swung as she moved between the treatment areas, documenting everything with the precision of someone who knew exactly how important these records would be. "Got the blood work results," she called out, adding another page to her growing file. "Clear signs of calcium deficiency in the dam, consistent with untreated eclampsia. Timeline matches perfectly with what we suspected." Harlan Pike stood near the reception desk, his polished boots and pressed shirt now at odds with his slightly disheveled hair. Though his face showed strain, he maintained a facade of calm control. "I need to contact my attorney," he announced to no one in particular, his voice carrying that same authoritative tone he'd used earlier, though now it rang hollow. "This is all a misunderstanding that will clear up shortly." Dr. Joyner merely nodded, not breaking stride, as he checked another set of vital signs. "You're welcome to make your calls from the waiting area, Mr. Pike. We'll need to maintain controlled access to the treatment areas at this point." As Harlan stepped outside to place his calls, Rook focused his attention on getting Yarrow settled. The pup had been through so much, yet his spirit remained strong. Rook prepared a comfortable kennel with fresh bedding, making sure it was within sight of where his mother and siblings were being treated. "Let's get you cleaned up properly," he said softly, gathering supplies for a thorough bath. The bitter chemical residue still clung to Yarrow's fur, and Rook wanted every bit of evidence properly documented before washing it away. The clinic had shifted into what felt like lockdown mode. Nellie posted a staff member at each entrance, recording everyone who came in or out. Dr. Joyner had the kennel access codes changed, ensuring only essential personnel could reach the isolated animals. Even the regular appointments were being rescheduled or redirected to partner clinics. "All movements logged," Nellie confirmed, tapping her clipboard. "We're tracking every person, every treatment, every medication. Nothing happens without documentation from here on out." Officer Sutton returned, her face showing quiet satisfaction. "Warrants being processed. Judge agrees we have probable cause. We should have official confirmation within the hour." A collective sense of relief rippled through the clinic staff, though everyone remained alert and focused. They'd won this battle, but experience had taught them that these situations could turn quickly. Rook watched through the window as Harlan paced in the parking lot, phone pressed to his ear. The breeder's carefully constructed image had cracked, revealing glimpses of something darker underneath. The way his fingers clenched around his phone, the tight set of his jaw, these were the tells of a man unused to losing control. "Keep everything locked down tight," Sutton advised, checking her own phone for updates. "People can do desperate things when their secrets start coming out." Dr. Joyner nodded, his expression grim but determined. "We'll maintain security protocols until this is fully resolved. No risks." As the sun began to set, casting orange light through the clinic windows, they settled into a tense waiting pattern. The mother dog and pups were stabilizing under proper care. Yarrow dozed in his kennel, finally able to rest without fear. Files of evidence grew thicker by the hour as Nellie organized everything for the authorities. The calm felt fragile, like a soap bubble that could burst at any moment. Every time a car drove past too slowly, heads turned. When shadows moved across the windows, hands tensed. They'd done everything by the book, built their case carefully, but experience had taught them all that cornered people could be unpredictable. "We've got rotating security checks on all entrances," Sutton informed them, returning from another perimeter walk. "Backup units are aware of the situation and ready to respond if needed." Rook found himself checking on Yarrow every few minutes, reassuring himself that the pup was safe. Each time he passed the isolation ward, he paused to observe the mother dog and remaining pups, watching their steady improvement under proper medical care. The evidence they'd gathered was overwhelming. Nellie's careful documentation showed the progression clearly. From Yarrow's early morning arrival to the discovery in the van, every moment was captured in photographs, medical records, and witness statements. The chemical residue, the malnutrition, the untreated eclampsia, it all painted a picture that would be hard to explain away. As night began to fall, the clinic settled into its secured routine. Staff moved in pairs, doors remained locked, and security lights cast bright pools across the parking lot. They were as ready as they could be, waiting for official word about the warrant while protecting the animals in their care. The quiet was punctuated by the soft sounds of medical equipment, the gentle whir of monitoring machines, and the occasional rustling of animals settling in their kennels. It was a pause between moments. The discovery was behind them, but the full resolution still lay ahead. Through it all, Yarrow remained a steady presence, his quiet strength a reminder of why they'd fought so hard. His pink eyes watched the activity around him with calm awareness, as if he understood that his actions had helped save not just himself, but his family as well. "Get some rest while you can," Dr. Joyner advised his team, though no one seemed inclined to relax fully. "We'll need to be sharp when the authorities arrive for the formal inspection." The night stretched ahead of them, filled with careful observation and detailed record-keeping. Every passing hour strengthened their position, adding weight to their documentation and solidifying the evidence they'd gathered. Yet beneath the professional calm, a current of tension remained, the quiet alertness of people who knew that the story wasn't over quite yet. Rook settled into a chair near Yarrow's kennel, prepared for a long night of watchful waiting. The pup's steady breathing provided a rhythm to the evening, a reminder that sometimes the biggest victories started with the smallest acts of courage. The evening lull had settled over the clinic like a deceptive blanket of calm. Sarah, the front desk receptionist, stifled a yawn as she sorted through the day's paperwork. The fluorescent lights hummed quietly overhead, and the gentle patter of early raindrops against the windows promised the storm that weather reports had been warning about all day. Rook had just finished his rounds, checking on the mother dog and her pups one last time before heading to the break rooms for a much-needed coffee. The exhaustion of the day's events weighed heavily on his shoulders, but he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Maybe it was the way Harlan had been too quiet in the last hour, or how his phone calls had grown more urgent and hushed. The security camera feed played quietly on the monitor behind the front desk, showing empty hallways and dimly lit kennels. Sarah reached for her water bottle, turning away from the entrance for just a moment. That's when it happened. Harlan Pike moved with unexpected speed for a man his size. 1 minute the waiting room was empty, and the next he was already halfway to the kennel area, his polished boots making barely a sound on the linoleum floor. The security card he'd palmed earlier in the day, when everyone was distracted by the dam's emergency, granted him access through the staff door before Sarah even realized what was happening. The first warning came as a startled yelp from Yarrow's kennel, followed by the metallic scrape of a carrier being roughly handled. By the time Sarah's hand found the alarm button, Harlan was already pushing through the exit, Yarrow's carrier clutched against his chest. "Code red!" Sarah's voice cracked through the intercom system. "Security breach in Kennel Block A." Rook dropped his coffee mug, barely registering the ceramic shatter as he sprinted towards the front. Through the glass doors, he caught a glimpse of Harlan's broad shoulders disappearing into the gathering darkness, heading for the parking lot where his black SUV waited. "He's got Yarrow!" The words tore from Rook's throat as he burst through the doors into the humid evening air. Rain was starting to fall more steadily now, fat drops that promised the beginning of the forecasted storm. Officer Sutton emerged from her patrol car, where she'd been updating dispatch, already reaching for her radio. "All units, we have a 1031 in progress at Riverside Veterinary Clinic. Suspect Harlan Pike fleeing in a black Ford Explorer, heading north on County Road 7. Suspect has taken evidence in an active investigation." The SUV's tires squealed against wet pavement as it peeled out of the lot. Rook was already running for his own car, keys jangling in his trembling hands. He heard Sutton's car door slam, saw the flash of emergency lights reflecting off the rain-slick asphalt. "Follow my lead!" Sutton called out as she pulled past him. "Stay on Channel 3. The storm was building quickly now, transforming the quiet evening into something wild and dangerous. Lightning flickered in the distance, illuminating massive clouds that rolled across the sky like waves of smoke. Rook's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel as he followed Sutton's patrol car, their small convoy cutting through the growing darkness. Wind-driven rain lashed against the windshield, forcing Rook to lean forward in his seat, straining to keep Sutton's taillights in view. His heart pounded with each passing mile, knowing that somewhere ahead, Yarrow was trapped in a carrier, probably terrified. The pup who'd been brave enough to expose the truth was now in the hands of the man he'd helped bring down. "He's heading for his property." Sutton's voice crackled over the radio. "Backup units are 10 minutes out. We can't wait for them." Rook knew she was right. 10 minutes was too long. 10 minutes could mean the difference between finding evidence and finding nothing at all. The thought of what Harlan might do to cover his tracks sent a chill through him that had nothing to do with the storm. Lightning split the sky again, closer now, followed almost immediately by a boom of thunder that seemed to shake the earth. The rain was coming down in sheets, reducing visibility to mere feet ahead. But there was no question of slowing down, not with every second feeling like it carried the weight of life or death. Through the storm's fury, Rook caught glimpses of familiar landmarks. The old Morgan place with its weather-beaten silo, the crooked mailbox at the Thompson turnoff. They were getting close to Pike's farm, a sprawling property that had been in his family for generations. The same property where he'd built his reputation as a breeder, where he'd hidden his darker practices behind a facade of respectability. Sutton's brake lights flared suddenly, and Rook nearly missed the turn onto Pike's long gravel drive. His tires skidded slightly as he followed her lead, throwing up sprays of muddy water. Through the curtain of rain, he could make out a dim light burning in the distance, the barn where Pike kept his breeding dogs. Fresh tire tracks cut dark lines through the mud, leading straight to the barn's wide doors. As they drew closer, Rook could see that one of the doors stood partially open, swaying slightly in the gusting wind. The SUV's tracks disappeared inside. Officer Sutton brought her patrol car to a stop about 50 feet from the barn, positioning it to illuminate the entrance with her spotlights. The beams cut through the rain like solid things, creating an eerie tunnel of light toward the building. "Stay behind me," Sutton ordered as they both left their vehicles, immediately getting soaked by the downpour. "We don't know what state of mind he's in." Rook nodded, water running down his face as they approached the gate that separated the barn's immediate yard from the drive. The chain-link fence rattled in the wind, its metal cold against his hands as they pushed through. Another flash of lightning revealed the scene in stark detail. The barn's weathered walls, the muddy yard, the dark bulk of Harlan's SUV just visible through the open door. Somewhere inside, Yarrow was waiting. Somewhere inside, a desperate man was cornered. Sutton drew her flashlight with one hand, her other resting near her weapon as they approached the barn. The wind drove the rain sideways now, and thunder rolled continuously overhead. Each step brought them closer to whatever waited in the shadows beyond that open door. Rook's fear was a living thing in his chest, not for himself, but for the small, brave pup who'd already survived so much. Without Yarrow, their case against Pike would be significantly weakened. More than that, the thought of Pike silencing the very creature who'd exposed his cruelty was unbearable. They reached the barn door together, pausing just outside the pool of darkness that waited beyond. Sutton's flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing scattered hay, old equipment, and the back end of Pike's SUV. Water dripped from the roof in steady streams, creating a curtain of silver in the light. "Pike!" Sutton's voice carried authority even over the storm's rage. "Come out where we can see you!" "It's over." The only response was another crash of thunder and the hollow sound of wind moaning through the barn's old boards. Somewhere in the darkness, something moved, sending a soft cascade of rustling sounds through the hay. Rook's eyes strained to pierce the shadows, searching for any sign of Yarrow's carrier, any hint of movement that might reveal where Pike had taken him. The barn's familiar smells, hay, animals, and the underlying mustiness of old wood, were sharpened by the rain and the electric tension in the air. They stood at the threshold of darkness, the storm raging behind them, knowing that whatever happened next would determine not just Yarrow's fate, but the fate of all the evidence they'd worked so hard to gather. The truth they'd uncovered hung in the balance, waiting to be either preserved or destroyed in the chaos of this stormy night. A sharp metallic rattle pierced the tense silence. In the dim light, Rook spotted an old propane heater wobbling precariously near a stack of hay bales. Before he could shout a warning, the heater tipped with a resounding crash. The dry straw caught instantly. Orange flames licked upward, casting dancing shadows across the barn's weathered walls. The fire spread with frightening speed, hungry fingers of flame reaching for more fuel. "Watch out!" Sutton's warning came a second too late. Something whistled through the air behind Rook. Pain exploded across his shoulders as Harlan swung a metal stock hook, catching him square across the back. Rook crashed hard onto the barn floor, his vision swimming with bursts of light. The impact drove the air from his lungs, leaving him gasping. Panicked barking filled the air as dogs in stacked wire cages realized the danger. The sound mixed with the growing roar of flames and the thunderstorm still raging outside. Smoke began to curl through the barn, thick and choking. Through the haze, Rook heard a familiar cry. Yarrow's distinctive bark cut through the chaos, coming from a wire crate near the wall. The small albino pup had wedged his head through a gap in the bars, stretching desperately toward Rook. His pink eyes reflected the growing firelight as he tugged insistently at Rook's sleeve with his teeth. Fighting through waves of dizziness, Rook followed Yarrow's urgent pulling. The pup was trying to direct his attention to something, a rack of tools mounted on the wall just within reach. Among them hung a pair of heavy-duty bolt cutters. Understanding dawned through the pain. Rook lunged for the tool, fingers closing around the rubber grip, just as another wave of smoke rolled through the barn. The acrid fumes burned his throat and eyes, but he forced himself to focus. With trembling hands, he attacked the lock on Yarrow's crate first. The bolt cutters made short work of it, and the small pup tumbled into his arms. But there was no time for reunion. Other dogs still needed help. Moving as quickly as he could through the thickening smoke, Rook worked his way down the line of cages. Each snip of the bolt cutters freed another dog. He found the dam in a larger crate, her eyes wide with fear. The lock fell away, and she bolted for the barn door, following her instincts toward safety. "This way!" Rook called hoarsely, trying to shepherd the freed dogs toward the exit. The smoke was getting worse, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. The heat had become intense, and somewhere above, timbers groaned ominously. A thunderous crack split the air. Rook looked up just in time to see a burning beam plummeting toward him. He dove forward, rolling across the hay-strewn floor as the massive timber crashed down where he'd been standing moments before. The impact sent sparks flying, and the heat seared the air in his lungs. Through the chaos, he heard Sutton's voice shouting. A dark figure burst through the smoke, Officer Sutton, moving with determined purpose. She spotted Harlan trying to slip away through a side door and launched herself forward, tackling him to the ground with practiced efficiency. "I've got him!" she yelled over the roar of the fire, wrestling Harlan's arms behind his back. "Get those dogs out!" In the distance, sirens wailed, growing closer by the second. Help was coming, but the fire wasn't waiting. Rook spotted one last crate half hidden behind some equipment. Clutching Yarrow to his chest with one arm, he staggered through the smoke and freed the final dog. The heat was unbearable now, and breathing had become almost impossible. Rook shoved the crate toward the door, encouraging its occupant to run. Rain and fresh air beckoned just steps away as he stumbled out into the storm, coughing violently but still on his feet. Yarrow pressed close against his chest, his small body trembling but unharmed. Around them, red and blue lights began to fill the farmyard as emergency vehicles arrived. The rain continued to pour, but Rook barely noticed it. They were alive. They were safe. And most importantly, they had won. The morning after the dramatic barn fire, sunlight streamed through the clinic windows as Dr. Merritt Joyner methodically assembled his documentation. His wire-rimmed glasses caught the light as he organized detailed medical records, photographs, and treatment logs into neat manila folders. Each piece of evidence told part of the story, from Yarrow's initial discovery to the rescue of multiple dogs from Pike's operation. "Everything's in order," Joyner said quietly, straightening his white coat. "Between our records, Nellie's photographs, and Officer Sutton's incident report from the barn, we have an airtight case." Nellie Voss stood nearby, her normally practical ponytail slightly disheveled from the long night. She was reviewing the extensive collection of photos she'd taken. Chemical stains on muzzles, bite marks that didn't match the story, the dam's severe medical condition, and the final dramatic rescue. Her steady hand sorted through them with purpose, selecting the most compelling images. "These will make it impossible to deny what was really happening," she said firmly. "The evidence speaks for itself." Officer Sutton Vale sat at a desk nearby, his uniform still showing traces of smoke from the barn fire. He was carefully typing up his official testimony, documenting everything from the initial investigation through to Harlan Pike's desperate attempt to destroy evidence and the dramatic rescue. His face showed focused determination as he detailed how Rook had risked his own safety to save the dogs. "Got it all down?" Sutton said, his voice gravelly from smoke exposure. "Every detail, every violation, every moment of that barn incident. No judge could ignore this level of documented cruelty and fraud." Rook sat quietly in a corner chair, Yarrow curled contentedly in his lap. The small albino pup's pink eyes were bright and alert as ever, his pale coat now clean and healthy-looking. Despite the chaos they'd been through, there was an unshakable bond between them. Rook's fingers gently stroked Yarrow's fur as he watched the others prepare the case. The legal proceedings moved swiftly. Within days, Harlan Pike faced multiple charges of animal cruelty and fraud. The evidence was overwhelming: medical records showing systematic abuse, photographic proof of unsafe conditions, testimony about the attempted cover-up, and the dramatic barn rescue that exposed everything. In the courthouse, Pike's carefully maintained image crumbled as the judge reviewed the extensive documentation. His polished boots and pressed shirt couldn't hide his true nature anymore. The judge's verdict was decisive. Pike's breeding license was immediately suspended, and he was permanently barred from animal ownership. The ruling sent ripples through the local breeding community. "Let this serve as a warning," the judge had declared firmly. "The welfare of animals in our care is not negotiable. This court will not tolerate systematic abuse hidden behind paperwork and false credentials." But beyond the legal victory, the case's resolution was deeply personal for everyone involved. One sunny afternoon, Rook sat in Dr. Joyner's office, hardly believing what he was hearing. "I'd like to sponsor your veterinary school application," Joyner said, removing his glasses to clean them thoughtfully. "What you showed during this whole situation, your judgment, your courage, your dedication to animal welfare, that's exactly what we need in this profession." Rook struggled to find words. "Dr. Joyner, thank you. That means more than I can say." "You've earned it," Joyner replied simply. "You saw what others missed, you fought for what was right, and you never lost sight of what mattered most: the animals in our care." The formal adoption papers for Yarrow came through soon after. Rook's hands trembled slightly as he signed the documents, making official what his heart had known since that first morning. Yarrow was his, and they belonged together. Nellie marked the occasion in her own way. As they were closing up the clinic one evening, she appeared with 2 steaming cups of black coffee, her signature drink. "Here's to new beginnings," she said, her usual practical manner softened by genuine pride. Her eyes were dry but full of meaning as she raised her cup. "You proved something important here, Rook. Not just about Pike, but about standing up for what's right." Rook accepted the cup gratefully. "I couldn't have done it without your help, Nellie. Those photographs, your support." She waved off his thanks. "You did the hard part. You saw the truth and wouldn't back down, even when it would have been easier to look the other way." Officer Sutton became a regular presence at the clinic, stopping by often to check on things. His role had evolved from stern enforcer to trusted friend and ally. He and Rook would sometimes talk about the case, but more often about the future and the positive changes that had come from it all. "You held the line when it mattered," Sutton said one day, watching Yarrow playfully chase his tail across the clinic floor. "That's not something everyone can do. This community's better for it." Weeks passed, and life settled into new rhythms. One crisp morning, Rook sat at his desk reviewing patient files when the mail arrived. Among the usual clinic correspondence were several thick envelopes addressed to him, responses from veterinary schools. Yarrow, who had grown into a confident young dog while keeping his sweetness, curled beneath the desk at Rook's feet. His pink eyes watched intently as Rook's hands shook slightly, opening the first envelope. "Dear Mr. Delaney, we are pleased to inform you." Rook had to pause, emotion overwhelming him. He reached down to scratch Yarrow's ears, marveling at how this unwanted pup had changed everything. From that first morning finding the shoebox on the clinic steps, through all the challenges and danger, to this moment of new beginnings, they had transformed each other's lives. The acceptance letters represented more than just admission to veterinary school. They were validation of Rook's instincts, his courage, and his unwavering commitment to doing what was right. The path ahead was clear now, illuminated by the trust of mentors like Joyner and Nellie, the respect of allies like Sutton, and most of all, the unwavering loyalty of a small albino pup who had needed someone to believe in him. Yarrow pressed closer against Rook's legs, offering quiet support, as always. His pink eyes held the same fearless spirit that had helped expose the truth and bring justice. Together they had faced down cruelty and won. Now they faced the future, their bond stronger than ever, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The clinic hummed with its usual activity, phones ringing, animals being treated, lives being helped and healed. But for Rook and Yarrow, it was more than just a workplace now. It was where their story had begun, where justice had prevailed, and where a new chapter was starting. The unwanted pup and the kennel tech who refused to look away had found their path forward, together. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.